Hey everybody, welcome to Bible class. Matthew 7 is where we have reached in our study of the Great Sermon on the Mount. We're going to look at 12 verses. I'm going to prep you for discussion, and then we're going to turn it over to your in-person class teacher. Jesus, as we look back at Matthew 5 and Matthew 6, he's been talking to us all about discipleship, right? What it looks like to learn from him and follow him and live for him in this world. So he's talked about the character of a disciple, and having the right sort of character is going to lead to the right sort of influence in the world around us, right? He's talked to us about the standard of righteousness in his kingdom, the battles that his disciples must be willing to fight, how we are to be committed, and how we react when we're not always getting our way and the going gets tough, who we're really living for, whose praise matters the most to us. He's talked to us about our prayers. What an amazing invitation to pray to our Creator as our Father in heaven. God is working on our hearts, right? And he taught us in this most recent lesson how things come to be in our hearts, and someone or something is reigning in our hearts. There's treasure being stored up in our hearts, but is it the right sort of treasure? Are we just living for this life on this earth, or is our focus first on the kingdom of heaven and God's righteousness? As we pivot into Matthew chapter 7, Jesus talks with us a little bit about our relationships. And two key words that I want you to keep in mind through these first 12 verses of Matthew chapter 7. How we see and what we are seeking. Let's dive in. Matthew chapter 7, verse 1. Judge not that you be not judged. Now, there are lots of people who know that is somewhere in the Bible, right? You might have heard someone who really doesn't know all that much about Jesus quote that statement. Well, here's where it comes from. Matthew 7, verse 1. Judge not that you be not judged. 4. Let's let him keep talking. With the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Now, what is Jesus talking about there? We need to dig a little bit more as a class, especially because this isn't the only time Jesus talks about how we see and what we notice. Sometimes he tells us we really need to be on guard as to the influences we allow into our hearts, right? Notice what he asks in verse 3. Why do you see the speck? Just imagine a little bitty speck that is in your brother's eye, but you do not notice, you do not see the log that is in your own eye. Can you imagine that? That I notice a little bitty speck in your eye. Meanwhile, I've got a giant tree sticking out of my own eye. Why is it that I can notice that speck in your eye clearer than I can notice the giant log sticking out of my own eye? What is that? And why are Jesus' disciples to be better than that? In verse 4, how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when there is a log in your own eye? You hypocrite, Jesus says. First take the log out of your own eye, then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. Do not give dogs what is holy, and do not throw your pearls before pigs, lest they trample them underfoot and turn to attack you. Does that make you scratch your head a little as to what Jesus is saying there? Let's be thinking about that, and we'll talk about it together. For now, notice in verse 7 where Jesus talks to us not just about seeing, but about seeking. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, and the one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks it will be open. Who are we really seeking from? Do you remember how in our last study at the end of Matthew 6, he told us, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. He's building on that here. In verse 9, which one of you, if his son asks him for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a serpent? If you then, who are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? Before we're done, notice how one more time Jesus talks to us about our relationships, how we relate to each other. Listen, whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them. For this is the law and the prophets. That's how Jews of the first century would describe what you and I call the Old Testament, right? You want to summarize the entire message of the Old Testament? Well, Jesus has been doing that. Whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them. It's just 12 verses, but Jesus has challenged me, and I guess he's challenging you. So let's talk about it together. Thanks so much for being in class. Hope you have a great rest of your class and a great start to this new week.